What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your Star Citizen Week in Review for June 21st, 2021. I know we said we weren't going to have a week in review this week. I am able to sneak it in. I'm doing it late Sunday night after my hockey game. We're going to be able to get that in. But next week, it's going to be a little bit late because I do fly back in from vacation on Monday. But for this week, 3.14 is really close. We had a ton of video updates, as well as they finally talked about replacing Port Olisar and something else on the stations. All right, like always, if this is your first week in review, this is where I take all of the official Star Citizen news each week, pile it into one video, and insert my opinions in there as well. And also, if you don't know, I live stream on twitch.tv every day, but Monday and Tuesday. This week I'm going to have off, so just make sure you hit the follow button and you'll be able to catch one of my next streams, twitch.tv/SaltEMike. But let's jump into the video. We're going to start out with patch notes, kind of. Star Citizen 3.14 is an Evocati. That's all I can really say about it. They patched it at some point, but that's as much as I'll say. As many of you know, I am an Evocati, so I'm not allowed to discuss any of my experiences there, but it is pretty much out in the open that there has been an Evocati test. Moving on to roadmap updates. It was a small week, so for roadmap roundup, as we're approaching an Evocati release and a wider PTU, you know, it's hard to expect to see much movement on the roadmap, and we didn't see much this week. So for release view, the Connie Taurus is committed for 3.14. I remember wanting this ship so badly when they first talked about it, but ships like the MSR, C2 Hercules, Caterpillar have totally made me not that excited for this one anymore. I'm looking forward to seeing how they packed the extra cargo into the ship, that secret spot of cargo that they had mentioned, as well as, you know, maybe some tweaks and updates to the Constellation series, because I think most of us would agree that it can use some. Actor feature team, Ladders Tier 1. This item is now under review, so it might shift around. So it's kind of been taken off the roadmap until they know where it's going to fall into place. And bombs. That is now space. It was Space Mine / bombs, and it's been renamed because Space Mines are coming later when their plan has been finalized. So still things up in the air, and kind of makes sense. I just can't see how bombs and mines really play into the Star Citizen universe at the moment. So it definitely is going to take some, you know, deep thinking to have it make sense and work well. Moving on to video updates, this is where the meat of this week is. Starting out with Inside Star Citizen, they had a dynamic missions featurette, and they started out with something that caught me completely off guard. It's Xenothreat version 2, and yeah, what's the biggest change?
The remaster of the Xenothreat event has so many improvements based on the feedback from the last event.
There was a kind of reaction to the way the phases, as we call them, the resupply phase and then the showdown phase.
What you'll get now is that basically you are resupplying the javelin that will then take you to the battle. And should you do a really bad job of keeping its health up, what you'll end up with is a smoking javelin on the other side.
I think all this seems pretty cool. It seems like it'll flow a lot better. I can't believe we're going to do it again, but I'm also kind of excited about it too. There were a number of minor changes to Xenothreat as well, and they kind of list them out here.
The AI would remember that you've done something bad to them. It could be like 15 minutes, half an hour later, that it remembers, you know, that you're someone who shot it and starts attacking you. Now we've put this decay in. What it means is if you do go above a friendly fire threshold, you will turn hostile. But that the length of time you'll remain hostile will depend on how many times did you sustain fire on them. Previously, there was just one set of friendly fire for everything in the game. Now it's split into AI, which we're much more lenient with, and players, which we obviously have to be a lot less lenient with. One of the other ways we'll be improving Xenothreat is with new dialogue.
We had players who weren't quite sure of what they had to do from moment to moment.
A lot of changes related to friendly fire and how quickly you'll lose that hostility tag. I love it. I think this is a pretty standard feature in other MMOs that I've played, and I'm glad it was added here along with some of the other changes that they talked about. But this last one, this one is everything.
One of the main criticisms we got was that there were no rewards.
We're now going to be giving rewards based on reputation, because we've added reputation to Xenothreat.
With the addition of reputation, we're able to start using that to build reputation with the CDF, the Civilian Defense Force. And like the more missions you do, or the better you do within missions with these events, the higher you'll go up through the standings with them. And depending on what standing you're at when the event ends, you'll get various different rewards.
For me personally, this is what drives me in video games, is the reward for your effort and hard work, learning the mechanic and having success with it consistently. This has been a major feature that was missing from the game for me. And to be able to reward players for their actions in the game now with items rather than just money, it's really great to see them get over that hump. And yeah, this should have more improvements for future updates and just everything related to the game, hopefully, if they insert it into the rest of the game, which they're not very consistent with those things. So moving on, they did a Ninetales lockdown talk as well. So what is that, in case you guys didn't know?
The Ninetales criminal gang is going to lock down a space station under the control of Crusader security, and both sides will then recruit players to help them to either end or continue the lockdown.
I love that it's both sides. Really looking forward to how this plays out, but they gave a little bit more detail on this later in the video, so here's that clip.
In the first phase, which we call the prologue, we're basically trying to get players online and let them know that something is about to happen. After phase 1 has been running for long enough, it kicks into phase 2. In phase 2, Crusader is aware that something is causing a quantum blockade around a station. They recruit players to protect ships that they will send out to scan for whatever is causing that quantum blockade. However, on the other side of things, Ninetales is going to be recruiting to have players go and destroy those ships, and seeing those two sides kind of collide with each other is where we're hoping to get a lot of the interesting gameplay in that stage. As for phases 3 and 4, I'd love to give you more detail, but Jared won't let me.
Okay, very cool, but we're not going to tell you what 3 and 4 are. What? They already told us. Like, TonyZ legitimately leaked what phase 3 and phase 4 would be in the Quanta update video. So those commodity alerts are going to play into this. They're going to go crazy at these locations, and you're going to be able to profit big time from them if you're able to get through the blockades. And the last phase looks like an Idris comes around and takes out a bunch of pirates. So, and we'll probably be playing both sides of that, right? So that's Ninetales lockdown. I don't know what they're hiding because they literally put it out there already. But just in case you didn't know, that's going to be it. It looks really cool. And they're going to be like kind of short events that are happen, for a few hours on a server occasionally. And yeah, I'm really excited to dive into that and see what happens. Then they moved on to a sprint report, and they started out with logos. They showed a health insurance company, tax collectors. I'm curious how that's going to play into the game, and a ship customizer logo. Nothing crazy there. A VFX thruster dust demonstration. Everybody on Twitter thought that this was the return of hover mode when they saw it in the preview on Instagram or whatever. It's Star Citizen, guys. It's always visuals. Always. Jeez. There was a new fire update. I think the idea here is to inform the player the direction the fire's going based on, how wind is blowing it, or venting and issues and things like that. There's also an SDF update related to that, where they're going to use that tech to move smoke through ships' corridors and things like that, which is really cool. Moving on to ships, they're working on the gold standard of the Retaliator. It seems like The internal metrics that we all hated for a really long time are finally getting fixed, and they sort of defended. I remember that. Redeemer Greybox still in progress as well, so they showed a bit of that. And then the Ares Starfighter is really far along, at least on the external. It looks really good. And then we saw a look at the Drake UI. We saw the, I think it was Aegis UI a few months back, and now they're showing us the Drake manufacturer. I don't know if I like it personally, but I am just in general loving that I'm seeing an X and Y axis to be able to like call out directions of targets and stuff with my friends. Loot generation. This is really exciting. You may not have noticed, but the boxes in the inventory, those were placeholder for armor. So this means that like loot may be a lot more than just water and med pens. It may be actually things that we're excited to find, maybe things that you can't buy in the game or outside of the game. Maybe there'll be some elements of things you can earn, which would be really awesome. And lastly, they did their standard environment updates: homesteads, hospitals, Crusader lighting. So those three things we've been seeing for months, and we've seen them again. They're coming along really, really nicely. SCL. Now, this was a bit of a weird update. So there was a lot of discussion about content that's coming soon, but there was also a lot of discussion around gameplay or features that seem to be still in discussion or in like the let's write a design document phase. You know what I mean? And yeah, they're not really being worked into the game at the moment. So I'm going to clip the stuff that is more along the lines of what's coming, and I'll mention the stuff that is still like being talked about. So starting out with atmospheric depth damage. What is that?
Ships will get an attribute which basically defines the atmospheric pressures it can take. We will introduce the attribute of atmospheric pressure resistance, which basically defines how deep a ship could go into a Crusader, and then it would start to get damaged.
So I didn't like the idea of this at first. For me, why would something like this be prioritized? But then they kind of, when you realize that Crusader's probably not going to have a lot of things on its surface, it doesn't have a surface, right? So flying around in a gas giant is a different experience. So they want to provide some level of gameplay there. And if it sort of seems like this might be an easy thing to do, I know nothing's easy, but yeah, it's something they did. I would have loved to see developers work on other things, but who knows how they prioritize things. Loot generation. So for loot generation, the guests give us the best information they have, but there's always a catch.
The idea came about as we noticed that the actor feature team was working on looting. So the problem came that they were working on looting, but we didn't have anything to loot. They were thinking, loot from the character you just killed, but that is just a part of the puzzle.
The main goal with the implementation at the moment is to make sure that we give our level and mission designers all the flexibility they need to create whatever loot situation they want in a particular area.
Now, this happens a lot with SCL, ISC, calling all devs. They talk a ton about what the tech could do, but then they never do those things with it, because that's the tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3 versions of this tech, right? And we never have the designer on the show when they talk about tech. So it's never the guy who makes it and the guy who uses it. It tends to just be the guy who makes it on the show, and that can be frustrating for me. But yeah, I hope that they're gonna have designers that work on this and make it really good. And yeah, I'm still skeptical until they start doing those things. And there's a lot of elements and tech that's come into the game that hasn't been utilized the way I'd like to see it, and harvestables is one of those, and that's the next thing we're going to touch on. Will they have anything more to do than eat and sell?
Right now they have the benefit of selling, which is not much of a benefit. Sadly, we are working to correct that. They need to become more valuable. The other benefit is that you actually can consume them, some of them. you don't want to consume the rental dung or something like this. The goal is to start using them for manufacturing science. So once we get to work on those parts, the idea is that we start being able to extract certain materials for them that can be used to manufacture, I don't know, chemical drugs, explosives, things like this. We never envisioned this to be a thing where you just go and you get a fruit and you can sell it for 10 UEC. No one wanted that. That's as far as we could go until our priority shifted to something which was the more important than it was. But the system is there to be used once the other puzzle pieces fall in place.
So this is another one of those huge things for me. We need to find things that matter in the game. In a sandbox game, you need to be able to use things that you find to shape your experiences. You know, like this, the idea that this is something they want to do, I don't expect to see it anytime soon. So this is one of those things that's like borderline. Something that's not coming, you know, but I wanted to show the clip and discuss it with you. This should help with that element of the game that I'm looking for. It also seems really far off though, so science isn't on the roadmap anywhere at the time of this recording, and I don't expect to see it on the roadmap for some time. Then they moved on to mining, and Lando asked a question about mining, and man, do I feel vindicated by the answer.
Is mining done? Is it feature complete, or is there more coming down the pipe?
I think mining is in a good place now. I mean, yeah, we can keep tweaking. I think we need a tweak of content and the difficulty, and bringing in more difficult rocks that require multiple players with super high-end gear to break, but also super high yield of resources from them.
I don't necessarily think that I had an impact on this, because I think it was pretty obvious, but I have been championing larger rocks, more difficult rocks, larger groups of rocks for a long time now. And it feels good that what I thought was important, they're going to do. So it's not like, ooh, I impacted the game. I don't feel like that. I just feel less dumb when it comes to the things that I discuss and the things that I find important. It feels really good that somebody who's incredibly smart and does know about game development feels the same way about the game as I do. And then just the quick hits. These are the things that I think are a little bit of a ways off. Long distance probing. This is, certainly sounds like it's in the design portion. I think they even mentioned that there isn't a dev that's working on it, bringing it into the game yet, because that dev is working on something else. But basically, they gave a small explanation of it. We drop probes ping, and give places of interest. You have to improve the signal by triangulating other probes to gather more detailed information, and then you can analyze to see what it is if you want, or you can sell that information. Then they talked about refining as well. They do seem to be talking about how refinery ships will work. The weird thing is that the Starfarer was mentioned many times as the ship referenced for this. So not this refining ship that we saw at CitizenCon 2019, the Starfarer. And they used mining rocks as an example. For me, I thought the Starfarer was always like liquid refining, but I guess they're going to utilize it for more than that. They also made it clear that it is a process that is not AFK like the stations. And they also pointed out that ships may not refine as well as the stations. And it's in design. It's waiting a programmer to on the show, I think it was the guy on the top left, to finish his current work. Refueling was also mentioned, but nothing really new from what we heard on Calling All Devs or Star Citizen Live that we've had months ago. I mean, but it was that we're working on it right now, so perhaps, this is the work that needs to complete before we see refining. Then lastly, resource management. This was the power systems that we saw with... I can't remember the name right now, but he was on the show. You guys can leave a comment down below and correct me here. Dan Truffin, there we go. And yeah, they underestimated how long it would take to get that work complete. They thought it would be 6 months. It's going to take over a year, but they're quite a ways into it. I believe at least 6 months into it now. So we're halfway there, and that is going to be a really cool element of the game. And if you guys remember, they talked about like the engineer gameplay a long time ago, sounding like it was coming. I think it's because they thought this was going to take 6 months. It didn't. So expect to start hearing about engineering gameplay I would guess towards the end of the year, maybe around CitizenCon this year. Other updates. We had a sneak peek, just more homestead updates. Wake me up when these panels actually mean something to me. Olisar replacement posts. So this I referenced in the intro. It was a post referencing like the station camping being a problem at Port Olisar, and Luke Presley says they're planning to replace all landing pads with hangars in the future. This was actually mentioned by Todd Pappy a long time ago because ships despawning and disappearing is not something they really want to show. So having them in hangars is a better thing. Landing in hangars is not going to defend you, but taking off from hangars, it is a little bit easier than just getting blown up on the pad before you even get to the ship, right? Then they asked if this was an issue at other rest stops. I think this is first. They asked this because they have security NPCs at the other stations, right? But if it's possible, it's happening. So I know it happens at Everus, and the other stations aren't busy enough to really see it. But yeah, the last thing he mentions is missile prototypes could help, but they are still a band-aid to the problem that I think we all need, that I think we all feel needs a serious solution. I've heard Cutlet talk about like shield bubbles that protect you when you reach inside of a station. Like, I mean, sort of like armistice zones that we have now, that, yeah, they're kind of needed in games, but maybe not in the way that they currently work, but sure. Then we have a cosplay contest details for CitizenCon Lite that we're going to have this year. So there's not going to be a stage walk, obviously. And we're just going to list off the rewards because it's pretty standard what a cosplay contest is, right? The Ares Inferno is going to be first, Redeemer second, and Taurus third. 4th through 8th are going to get honorable mentions and get a Rock DS. And the fan favorite is going to get an Ares Ion. I think the list of rewards kind of shows some of the ships they feel are going to be coming online around that time. We had a launcher update, a new warning type. A friend of mine, Henrik, if you guys watch Answer the Call, you'd be familiar with him. Tell me that he's got an i9 like 9900K or something like 10900K, and the game told him that his computer specs were below the minimum. So I don't know why. You'll also see the user agreement when you weren't, apparently, and there were some telemetry fixes in there as well. And then lastly, there was a Xian Letter. They posted it in the Xian language, so linguists have to get on this before we'll ever get an understanding of what it said. And CIG gave everybody a key to kind of break down some of the words that you may not know. And yeah, we were able to I found a person on Twitter who broke it down, and yeah, it sounds like they mentioned the Kurthak, they attacked the Xian, and it seems like there's something brewing over there, but I'll leave a link to the translation in the description, and you guys can read it for yourselves. Guys, that'll do it for this week's Week in Review. It's midnight already, and I have to start editing this video, so make sure you hit a like on the video if you got to this point and you really enjoyed it. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet, and yeah, have a great week. I'm going to miss my live stream very, very much, so if you guys watch the YouTube videos and the live stream, I'll miss you guys. YouTube, no Answer the Call this week, and a late Week in Review, so I'll miss you guys as well. Everybody have a great week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys Tuesday or Wednesday.